This landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazell was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified. UFO Classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Well, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus, and his name is Tom DeLonge. What a whirlwind of a week. I will tell you, if you ever had any doubt about what Tom DeLonge was doing and the incredible effort by his To the Stars Academy team, all of those doubts were dispelled on Sunday, December 17th, when the New York Times ran a pivotal article. And after that article, where they interviewed Luis Elizondo, who is with To the Stars Academy, we saw a huge media presence. This CNN, MSNBC, the BBC, it went all over the world. So for people that worked in key positions in the United States military to come out and talk about the fact that, yes, we did spend $22 million funding UFO research. And guess what? That money went to Robert Bigelow, who we have talked about many, many times on my show. And we have also definitely seen some people come out, you know, the same old, the windbags, Seth Shostak, Neil deGrasse Tyson, the talking heads that truly are brilliant people and do incredible work, but know nothing about this topic. And that is most unfortunate. I was listening to an interview with Don Lemon on CNN, and he was interviewing Neil, and it was so insulting to everyone who has worked their entire life to research this subject that, of course, I had to call CNN and give them my 2 cents. And I never get on my Twitter account, but I did because I wanted to tweet and send it right to those people. This is ridiculous. It is very pivotal that what happened in the New York Times happened. And we are going to, from all accounts, see the fact that as the days progress, there will be more and more information that will come forward with regard to this. It's going to be a very exciting 2018. And again, I want to just say thank you very much to Tom DeLonge, to Colm Kelleher, to Dr. Hal Puthoff, Dr. Gary Nolan, all of these people who are involved in this. And I want you to move towards and really study and look at George Knapp. I'm sure most of you do. He is an investigative journalist, groundbreaking, and he has had a couple interviews this week on KLAS where he has interviewed Senator Harry Reid, and those interviews give you a little bit of information of why there wasn't more research conducted by the military, why there wasn't more funding that went into researching something that's very critical. He said in this interview that China and Russia, all these other countries have spent far more money and taken this much more seriously than we have in the United States, and that his belief was that was due to some of the people involved in the military that have a particular religious belief system. Now, I'm going to just tell you right now that I have very systematically on every single one of my shows given you information about all of these things. And I'm going to point again to Nick Redfern's work and Final Events. And I encourage you, if you buy one book on the subject, to get Final Events, because that deals with the Collins elite. And I would be absolutely shocked if the Collins elite was not this religious group of people that we're being given little bits of information about that tried to shut down all of the funding for UFO research or the paranormal research, all of this stuff. So you have to read that book and know that the game is afoot and it's going to get really, really interesting. It has also been a huge shock for people, I am sure, like Paul Dean, who has been on my program before, and he is a relentless researcher. He's in Australia. I reached out to him because I wanted a comment from him, and I'm going to read you what he said. So this is from Paul Dean. After years and years of politely asking U.S. authorities, including the submission of dozens of requests for records under the Freedom of Information Act to the Defense Intelligence Agency, the Office of the Secretary of Defense, etc., all we have been told is that there is no centralized UFO desk. There was no hush-hush program or project. Usually researchers are told to go back to the Project Blue Book fact, blah, blah, blah. I gotta love that because I can hear Paul saying that. He continues, well, the U.S. military has been caught in another big lie, and so have the debunkers. Debunkers have been stating for years that the U.S. military has simply not investigated or analyzed classic UFO events, or that there hasn't been a centralized UFO program since the United States Air Force's Project Blue Book, or that if a UFO case is reported, it is handled quickly at a local level, if at all, or that the USG has no modern UFO records left to be released, nothing highly classified, on and on. I never bought any of it, and that's why I continue blog published research, and he does, and I'll be posting those links for you. The Pentagon has continued to do core UFO analysis. It's been utterly unspoken about. It's been centralized. All the very issues debunkers have told us wasn't happening, never providing any proof of mind you, is in fact happening. If the Pentagon was going to admit it by themselves, so much for UFOs, nothing to hide. Not only that, but now we have been exposed to one of the cases the AATIP UFO project studied, an encounter between the U.S. Navy and an unidentifiable airborne Tic Tac, which outperformed a pair of advanced FA-18 Super Hornets in the vicinity of the USS Nimitz. This isn't some vague 1950s sighting, but a 2004 incident which was backed up by sensor data just off the coast of San Diego. This all could be just one part of a much wider UFO analysis by the U.S. defense establishment. I'm not talking either about the study of more mundane issues like stray aircraft intruding into restricted airspace or foreign satellite launch profiles. I'm talking about events far more mysterious. For instance, my own work after dozens of letters and FOIA requests with Northcom demonstrate one current UFO subdesk at Peterson Air Force Base, and its role is well aside from analysis on unknown or stray aircraft movements, radar glitches, etc. Those are handled by other cells. There is an old NORAD Northcom Center for Aerospace Analysis, which has handled the weirdest of the weird unknown pending radar tracks. See forthcoming publications, and he will be giving you this information. He also goes on to state some other things, and I'll read those when we get back from our next break. But this gives you a good idea of how Paul and Barry Greenwood and people like that feel, who have been trying to pummel the United States for releases of information about this, and they've got nothing. They've been lied to. We have all been lied to. And so it's, like I said, this gig is getting really, really interesting. So I will look forward to giving you more. I'll also be posting Paul's statement. It's important, and I hope that you go to Documenting the Evidence UFOs, his blog spot. I also am going to, now that I've just given you all of that information, I'm going to bring on my guest tonight. And Gary is somebody who has been researching UFOs and the unknown, the unexplainable since 1987. Gary Hart is a brilliant researcher, and I know this because I have been fortunate enough to become his friend. I've spoken with him on many occasions. and he has actively been pursuing this research from his Central Illinois home. He has been with MUFON, APRO, and other research organizations. His research specialty is developing sensors and image capture devices for use in detecting and documenting anomalous events and their associated energy discharges. He has, in the past several years, focused his study on anomalous activity found in several regions in Missouri, and we all know that there's some good stuff going on there. And we're going to have him just talk a little bit more about what he's been doing. But Gary, I'm so happy to have you here. People need to know the important work that you have done.
Well, it's definitely different. I do appreciate the time to visit with you this evening. It's so different. It kind of shocks me that other people, other investigators, haven't followed the same paths that I have followed because they've been so successful. Successful enough that I've had some people argue with me that you can't do that, as if I couldn't gain any additional information or experience from what I was doing. But how do you argue with success? I should say at this point that whatever I say, I can have conclusions, personal conclusions based upon evidence. But if you want to call everything I say an opinion, that's fine, because everybody has a right to their own opinion. But that also makes my points inarguable.
Absolutely. And that is brilliant. That is brilliant. And I wanted to ask you before we delve into all of this, all of your important work that we can learn from, I want to ask you what your thoughts are on the past week.
Very interesting. But there are a lot of questions that haven't been answered, but at least we've gotten apparently a military video from several different situations and a description of the event off the Nimitz, as I remember, about jets flying and following an object and watching it turn as it was flying. Other situations like that have come out. They haven't gotten much, if any, press at all. The Chileans had jets, or I guess it was a helicopter that videoed an object that was laying down a vapor trail of some kind and moving in an anomalous manner just a few months ago. So this stuff has been out there, and this is a military observations. They're considered to be some of the best visual observers, most qualified observers because of their extensive training. I don't see how people can ignore this, because this actually understanding this phenomenon is our future. This is how we get to the other planets. This is how we get into the galaxy. This is how we travel and beat other beings in the rest of the universe. This is where it starts.
It is, and it's interesting, and you bring up a really, really good point. I mean, every other country has been releasing things, and the Chileans have been especially good at that and being very, pretty forthright about the fact that their military, the government is funding these operations. And I want to just point to NARCAP, if any of you need to see really good research by Ted Rowe, Dr. Richard Haynes, about military pilot encounters, both commercial and military, and go to NARCAP. Ted's been on the show before, so I just want to throw that in. But other countries, why do you think that the United States has been so dysfunctional and so secretive?
That's a good question. There have been a lot of conspiracy theorists. I don't necessarily buy into that because I don't personally see the evidence. They can consider it a threat, or these craft that are flying around in our airspace to be a threat. To some extent, it's a concern because they might hit airplanes, and there have been some incidents involving that. A few years ago, I heard of some. Other than that, I don't know. If they think that they don't control the airspace, well, no, they don't, because we share the airspace with beings from other planets and other spaces. That's just the bottom line. And until they start seeing the whole picture and understanding that at some point we need to understand what we're seeing and understand what it means to us as a species, because it has a species-wide effect, then we're going to stay in the same situation we're currently in. It's great that some information is being released, but it needs to continue, and it needs to be, we need to show that it's a positive process, and that more observers coming together and discussing what they see and more scientific study of it is very important to us. When you see these things flying around in the sky, and this is, for instance, when you see them flying around in the sky, they don't appear to be depositing any pollution. And they seem to be moving as if they're light as a feather. Now, wouldn't it seem that we could use that in our transportation situation instead of polluting our atmosphere and causing global warming? I think it's important for us not to stick our heads in the sand about global warming because and airplanes add a significant amount of pollution to cause that. So there are a lot of positive benefits that could come from studying this. From my contact with a number of entities, I don't think it would be a problem to have the technology shared if we accept the responsibility of knowing about it. I know we have a lot of problems as humans, but we need to really make some advances here. I mean, and that's one reason why they're flying through our skies, to get our interest.
Well, and it is a really interesting time. I mean, for me, I mean, I'm pinching myself, and I think a lot of other people are as well, especially some of the older researchers, because they honestly feel they'd never thought they would see this day come in their lives. And so I think they're all just taken aback by this, by these key players coming out in the way that they did. And they were absolutely brilliant about the way they went to the New York Times and then had, every news outlet and boom, boom, boom. I mean, they had this choreographed.
Yeah.
It was.
I think it's Popular Mechanics had an article about it.
They did. And that was.
I mean, it's important, but it gets into Popular Mechanics.
Oh dear. Well, and Popular Science and some of these other. I mean, it's just like even Popular Science had something. Yes, UFOs exist, but they're probably not what you think. And then, of course, I've got a paragraph saying, well, it's the slim possibility, like an infinitely small chance that this is really some interstellar spacecraft belonging to an otherworldly species. I mean, and then it says the answer to the alien question is probably no. It's like, really? Wow. I mean, even after all of this, one of these days, these people are going to look really, really stupid. And I'm hoping that day comes probably next week.
And see, that's why I want to maintain a good contact with scientists, even though they've snubbed me on more than one occasion, because I don't want them to feel bad when somebody else comes up with the understanding and can transmit it to them and they start to get the picture. But there is so much bias among scientific researchers that seems to be a major problem. They think they know it all, and they think we as humans know it all, and that simply is not the case. And I can say that from personal experience, because I've had experiences that would most people will blow their minds, and it provides an answer as to why things are happening the way they are. So it's an evolutionary turning point in the history of our species, and I think we ought to look at it that way.
Well, I think so too.
I don't see it exactly as somebody having eggs on their face, because I don't want them to feel bad about that, because I want their continued contribution in the future also.
You are so nice. Oh,
well,
I need to read the self-help books that you read. Oh no, you're such a kind person. But I mean, for me, I just look at some of this and I think, oh my gosh, if you are that ego-driven, egocentric, that you can't understand that we're not where the beginning and the end, I mean, that then I really kind of feel like, gosh, quit dragging us down.
Well, one thing is you look at what other people are doing and what other organizations are doing, and then you do something different. That's how you get to a better place. Because I've been a member of MUFON on like 4 different occasions now, and I know some things that they haven't done right in the past, but I want to see them change. I want to see them have a reason to change, and to be cooperative and understand that it can be of everybody's benefit if they do. So I'm hopeful and encouraging in that respect. So I may have bad thoughts to start with about particular situations, but then I look at, I really need to be thinking differently about this.
But I mean, you've done important work, and I think that the difference between you and a lot of other people, perhaps not everybody, but some people involved in this organization, is the fact that when you see something that is wrong, you have the courage and the fortitude to stand up and try to make a change. And I truly believe that's what, if MUFON is going to become a better place, that's what people need to do. They can't brush things under the rug.
Yes. They have a great database, but they could make things simpler for the investigators. They could have a clearer goal. They could understand, get some idea of where we're really going on this, because I presented my information in front of a number of different MUFON groups, and I get kind of a yawn. And yet what I think is happening and what I've documented is astonishing, and it's really documents things that people have wanted to document for a long time, and it's the most unusual phenomena. And it's also simplified our view because it ties all the phenomena together, all different types of paranormal or beyond, at this time, science phenomena together. So it has moved us, or moved me in a particular direction, and I want to share that. I don't have any problem doing that. But there's a lot of bias. There's a lot of people that don't want to hear what I have to say, and I find that amazing, because it's only born of personal experience.
Absolutely. And I will tell you, I know you have a lot that you have done, and I really respect your work, and that's why I wanted to bring you on the show, because it's important and we can learn from it. And this is a crucial time. We have to really get in there and make some change. And we're going to get ready to take a break here. I just want to tell all of you, thank you for getting into chat. And we are going to, please call in. I know that Libertas wanted to call in. And I'm Erica Lukes here with a very exciting night on KCOR. We will catch you on the other side of the break.
Stand by.
This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified.
UFO Classified
with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
Patrick Phillips here, sending warm wishes to you and your family. May your heart and home be filled with all the joys of the season. Happy holidays from Pop Culture Tonight.
The Fenton Files, where it's all connected.
You see, whoever controls technology controls the world.
Come explore a universe full of possibilities. Every Monday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. The Fenton Files. Go where no other show has gone before.
You can deny all the things I've seen, all the things I've discovered, but not for much longer. Because too many others know what's happening out there.
Whether it be UFOs, aliens, conspiracies, or even consciousness, your host, Lorian Fenton, has a file for that. The Fenton Files. Your journey to the truth is but a file away. Live, Monday nights, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The Fenton Files.
Incredibly intense.
Where truth is just waiting to be discovered.
Now, broadcasting in digital HD radio.
The KCOR Digital Radio Network family this Christmas would like to join you and your family as we celebrate home for the holidays.
I'm psyched. I know it's awesome.
Starting Christmas Eve at 9 p.m. Pacific, the network goes commercial-free, playing the best in Christmas music from around the world.
No one should be alone on Christmas.
Christmas Day, turn us on and leave us on.
You're going to love it. You're going to love it.
From the entire KCOR Digital Radio Network family, Merry Christmas.
Ho, 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 ho. Merry Christmas. Ho, 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 ho.
Here's what happened on the last episode of Three Guys, No Ties.
The Ronettes released a Christmas tune called I Saw Mummy Kissing Santa Claus, a song about a mother who cops a fill from a geriatric home invader. The child in the song thinks it would be funny if Dad walked in and saw Mum touching up Santa. Yeah, Okay, so the kid wants to see his dad murder Santa and beat up his wife for Christmas.
3 Guys, No Ties. Wednesday nights, 7 to 9 Pacific on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Hello, this is Solaris Blue Raven, host of Hyperspace, exclusively here at KCOR Digital Radio Network, wishing you and your loved ones a very Merry Christmas, stellar solstice, and a magical New Year. Blessed be.
You're listening to UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back and happy Fantopia Friday. Happy Disclosure Friday. I want to say that this has been a week that I will never, ever forget. And I hope that all of you have run out and purchased a copy of the New York Times and any publication. The Atlantic has done a great article as well about what China is doing with regard to research. I mean, there's so much going on right now. And rest assured, this has only just begun. So keep your eyes out and make sure when you are doing research or looking for answers that you are going to credible sources. You're going to sources for information that you can vet, and you are making sure that they're not anonymous sources or they're not sources that hide behind a pseudonym. And I'm just going to throw that out there. I think that's incredibly important. I know that there's this is a perfect time to spread disinformation, and that will be taking place, and we'll see some of the debunkers trying to hang on for any, importance for their bully pulpit, so they can stay relevant. But luckily, that I believe that their time is going to be quickly coming to an end. I'm really excited about it. 2018 is going to be a killer year, and I want to tell you that my guest tonight is someone that I have been speaking with for quite a while, and someone who I know is a researcher unlike anyone that I've known. He has done the work, the field research. He's interacted with whatever this is, and he has a lot of technical information that he can share with us. Gary Hart is here, and he has been researching since 1987. So, Gary, welcome back.
Hi there.
It's so much fun to have you.
Well, I've had some wild experiences, and one thing I can say is when I've had balls of light moving around me more than I can count, other people would say that they would be really scared. And I would say, why? Because I figured out a long time ago, the best approach is that if there's nothing to be scared about, then why should you be scared? And in every situation that I've run into since I came to that conclusion, I've been there and there's nothing to be scared about. And that's a very strange, for many people, conclusion to come up with, but that's the fact. When you have these things moving around you, you are able to observe more clearly what they're doing and how they're interacting with you, because practically everything that I've seen and done has interacted with me. And I haven't found anything to be scared about. Now, maybe that's highly unusual among different people with their different experiences, but you really have to, and this is from a scientific perspective, you have to think, well, control your emotions, because you want to be able to react to something if it's appropriate. But if it's not appropriate, then you shouldn't have an automatic reaction. You shouldn't need that. And I found that has really changed my experiences dramatically by having that thought process engaged.
And I wanted to say to you, because there is a push. I mean, there are people in this quote unquote field who are rushing and going down the road that everything is demonic, or that everything is negative, and that this is harming us by interacting with us. And for me, having had my own experiences throughout my life, whatever this is has been profoundly positive.
Yeah.
And so
I can say there are two things going there. One is that they're drawing that conclusion based upon no evidence, especially no personal evidence. Or the other possibility is that they're simply accepting somebody else's word for it. And both of those are equally negative and non-productive. When we're talking about something that is incredibly important and potentially of communicating with other species that have other points of view, and they are out there, positive beings, for sure. So that you don't want a roadblock like that right in front of everything, so that you don't explore further and see what's really out there, because that's why they're here, because they're interested in stirring up our curiosity and do want to communicate with us. So you have to remove roadblocks.
Right.
Humans have a series of roadblocks, of biases, and those can't be there if you're doing a truly scientific study, and it shouldn't be something that is judged based upon some false or erroneous ideas that we've had for decades or ages. We've got to get rid of some of those ideas.
Absolutely. And we have a caller on the phone, and I want to bring him on, but we're going to talk more about that because I think that's a really important point, and that will help all of us as researchers. So, all right, let's take our caller.
Erica, good evening.
What are you doing? How are you?
I am fine, young lady. And yourself?
You know what? It's a Friday night, and we've had a crazy week. I'm groovy.
If you were any better, you'd be twins.
Oh.
Yeah, I'd like to weigh in on you can use that, by the way. From now
wow.
on. It's okay.
I like it. Thank you.
I just want to weigh in a bit on the DeLonge thing. I'm not a DeLonge fan. I think he's being played by a country fiddle, like a country fiddle, I should say. My opinion hasn't changed from day one on that. Let's go with first. Let's look at what's the name of the budget that was just released. Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification. So they're using him to change the paradigm from the others that are here, are friendly and good, to 100% evil. I think they're just a microcosm of the universe where there's good ones and there's bad ones. But he's always pushing that the others that are here are threats. So I think they're using them to change that paradigm. Some of the very best information on this that I've read is right out there, and you talked about it a little bit. It's the I-Team on the Vegas station. There's two different dates of material on there where I think it was Knapp that probably wrote the verbiage. But if you go to it, I can plug them into chat after if you wish. But there's some very good information, especially from Harry Reid. But the ufologists, we all fell on our face a little bit on a couple of things. One is that if they issued an RFP for this project, which is what Harry Reid has stated, we missed it. Because, are you there, by the way? I'm sorry.
Yes, yeah, no, absolutely.
Cell phone sounds a little dead. So we missed the RFP if it was publicly released. And also, the media's not asking the questions about the biggest part of it, which is the material. They have material, which translates, as we know, to craft. They have numerous craft. So I think they haven't got their Operation Mockingbird permission to talk much about the material, but I think we shouldn't let that go. I think that's a good thing. Now, let me just ask you a couple. I have a recommendation for you, maybe Tina Marie, in your intro. No one is using this, so you'd be the first.
Oh, dang it. I think we just... Oh, there you got to repeat that because I think we just lost you.
Okay. Senator Daniel Inouye, and his name's come up as being one of the ones to support the budget for this. He didn't invest. He was asked by other members of Congress to do an investigation on a secret government. He did do that, and then he did a speech on it. So there's go to YouTube and search for Daniel Inouye. I'm going to guess it's Inoyue, Secret Government, and listen. There's a very short clip on there, 20-something seconds, and I would add that to my intro if I was doing a show. I do have a link, by the way, that was provided to me, and it's one link, and there's a bunch of stuff that's added on with all the with CNN and all of the other stations where there were brief interviews. Do you want me to throw that in the chat?
Absolutely.
After?
Oh, please. And that's great. Okay. And thank you so much for giving me that, because even if it's 20 seconds, that is pivotal, to hear these little bits and pieces from people that are there and they can see that. And I will tell you that George Knapp, that interview with Harry Reid there are a lot of things people need to pick up on.
Right, but if people go to the Vegas station 8, what is it, Channel 8 there in Vegas, right?
KLAS, yep.
Right, the story that accompanies the interview on the iTeam links, you want to read that because there's stuff in there that's not in the interview that they videotaped with Harry Reid. It's just a recommendation. By the way, I have one more thing for you. It was provided to me. I haven't yet read it, but I have what's called the President Executive Order 13526, which is all the parameters of classification of material and declassifying material. It is a government website, just to give you a heads up, but if you'd like, I will plunk that in there too. That would be an interesting read.
I would love that. I would love that. When are we going to get you on the show? Dang it. Let's chat about that.
If I were any better, I'd be sitting beside you in your mini studio right now. We'd be having a glass of wine and smiling, and no one would see us smiling. Just another quick one, too, is George Knapp made a comment about Bigelow sending his scientist out to the ranch to the Skinwalker when he owned it. And Knapp stated that apparently some of the scientists had some very negative experiences because whatever was there, I'll use the word attached themselves to him and went home with them and impacted their families. I thought that was a little scary, but still interesting. So
yes, no, absolutely. And I've heard that. And so that is interesting. And definitely I want to talk to Gary about that, because Gary's got so much information and he's been in here really doing groundbreaking research, in my opinion. And I thank you so much for calling. You have so much to add. I love it. And I'm going to message you and we'll get you on the show.
Yeah, right. That'd be a funny session, wouldn't it?
It'd be
a couple
great.
more quick comments, and I don't want to take up George's time, but I think that all the comments about, well, they're demons and evil and religion, it's a load of BS, because the reason they're not disclosing, and you can call this a mini disclosure, is that they are protecting fossil fuels. And they will do that while every one of us listening they'll still be burning oil when we've gone to the happy hunting ground. So I think it's all as a result of protecting fossil fuels and the cabal's oil money. I think that's really what it's about. But anyways, I've taken enough of your time. Thank you for taking the call.
Thank you.
George,
great comments.
George, thanks for putting up with me tonight, and Merry Christmas to everyone. And I'll plunk a few links into chat if that's okay.
Absolutely. Thank you for calling in. We appreciate your comments.
My
Happy
pleasure.
holidays. Yeah.
Can I say a few things?
Yes. Oh, please say many.
One thing is, don't read too much into the title of their study, because I saw a blimp-shaped object back in 94, I think, 93 or 94, when I was in central Missouri. And it was a clear sky early in the morning. I calculated, based upon the fact that it flew across, it was about the size of a blimp, 100 feet long or so, and fairly close to the house I was staying in. I saw it go across 2/3 of the sky and calculated it was moving about 2,500 miles an hour noiselessly. Now, if you have something like that moving through commercial traffic, I can understand why you might think that would be a threat. But one of the things I posted on Facebook just recently was I think the military is in awe of their navigational and avoidance, accident avoidance technologies, because I haven't heard of a crash between a UFO and a plane in a long time, if ever. So there's something they're doing right. And yet, from our perspective, people would throw up their hands and say, "My God, it's going to hit us." And the fact is, they don't. So what are they doing right? And that's technology we should have. There shouldn't be any reason why. And communicating with the beings that are doing that would seem to be the best way of doing it. And in fact, there are ways of doing that, apparently, and I'm slowly coming upon those. But even my own experiences, I am the student of other beings, other souls, and they have guided me in what I've seen in a most amazing way. But it must have been because I was pushing all the right buttons and doing all the right moves and looking at the right evidence and coming to the right conclusion before that, so that they stepped in. And so there are other beings that can help us if we accept the responsibility of the physician of studying this, because it's extremely important and yet represents a lot of energy and something that you can do a lot of damage with if you're not ultimately responsible for it. But there
absolutely. But I have to just ask you. But there are negative aspects to this. I mean, absolutely, as much as and so address some of that, because I know that there.
All of the paranormal phenomena fits together. It's all the same energy. From my opinion, it's all the same energy. In other words, haunted phenomena, luminous phenomena, beings of all types. It's what happens after you pass on. There is another dimension. We're looking at a multi-dimensional framework of reality, and there are portals or holes, wormholes, if you want to call them that. I call them portals. My research has confirmed what has been experienced at the ranch. And I don't know anybody else that is saying that at this time, but I've seen 4 portals myself. And if you have a portal, that's the trick from getting from one place to another in the universe without a time element or a minimal time element, certainly. And that's how you beat the speed of light, Einstein's equation. And there's even a talk of this person, Ben Rich, who used to run Skunk Works out in California. One of the talks he gave before he passed away, he said, "We know how to do that. We know how to. We know the error factor in Einstein's equation, so we could send and take ET back home if we wanted to." So, and I believe that's accurate because Jan Harzan apparently was in that meeting, and that's basically what I've seen: is that there are tricks to get around the speed of light, which negates any problem in traveling from one place to another in this galaxy for sure, in this solar system for sure, and potentially within the universe. There may be no restrictions at all if you know how the tricks work.
Absolutely. And I have to ask you, though, with regard to Skinwalker Ranch, because I know we both look at this and that whole area because it is it's an important place. And Libertas was right when he mentioned the fact that researchers that were there working with Bigelow did not want to step foot on the property because of the fact that whatever this is was very insidious and it would affect very negatively what was going on in their lives or their family members.
I have no fear. For what I've experienced, I have absolutely no fear of anything. I have concern and am aware, but the experience is important, and who you are when you step on the property has a lot to do with it. Because all of these entities, every entity that I've seen moving around me, including these balls of light, I believe they're intelligent. The ones I've experienced are intelligent for sure. That they can read your mind. They know who you are before you even step anywhere near where your target area is. And that has a lot more to do with it than most people would think. But this whole area is an experimental area. So I have my own conclusions. Other people would disagree, but they've got to have the experience to really understand what's going on. And at this point, I have no fear about having any experience because I would know pretty much how to handle it, when to step back, when to move forward, who's there, how to communicate in some basic form, and then it goes on from there. The more experiences you have, the more familiar you get with it, the more calm you get with it and dealing with it. And it's all learning experience. And it's quite complicated when you move into it. So a simple conclusion based on relatively little evidence, still means that you've got to study it more, and you've got to have the courage to study it, understanding everything about it. We do.
So with regard to, I mean, all of your studies and how you interact with this or how you gauge what it is that's going on around you, tell me, I specifically want to know, like, if we're in a situation, how do we discern between the different types of energies or entities?
Well, first of all, I would have Sasquatch with me. And I know that's going to throw a lot of people. But I have documentation how they approached us, my wife and I, and we've been communicating for the last 5 years. When I've seen these portals, I've seen 4 of them. In the 2 different situations that I saw portals, there were Squatch around me. I couldn't see them, but they were definitely there because they've had very close contact with us. And there's no question. With the documentation I've got, there's absolutely no question as to where it started and how it's progressed from there. And they were there watching us as students. But the interesting thing is, they put me in these situations, and I don't know exactly how they did, because I just started driving at night and decided to go to a particular location, and I went there, and things started happening when I got there. And I knew the Squatch were around me. They're very intelligent people, souls, beings, at least the ones that we're communicating with here in the Midwest, which are the ancient ones that Jack Lapsaritis talks about in his books. And they consider themselves guardian angels for people also. So that's the level at which they're at. And of course, what I just said is exactly the opposite of what you hear from any other source except for Jack Lapsaritis. And I understand that too, how difficult it is to believe this, but when you experience it, it proves itself. It specifically proves itself. So I've had protection and observers there when I saw all this other stuff. And the most interesting thing is when all this stuff was going on around me, because it was like a play, a series of different events happening in a series over a period of about 6 hours at the longest time that I was involved was what was going on. They didn't tell me how to think. They didn't tell me what it was. They let me come to my own conclusions about what I was seeing. But when I was seeing portals appear around me and seeing entities, these balls of light start blinking lights and then come closer and start flying around me in different ways. And I could tell that they were thinking because they seemed to be like a step ahead of my thought. And in some cases, they seemed to mimic what I would have thought previously. But that whole process, I had to figure out myself, which is exactly what I wanted to do. There was no force at all to come to any particular conclusion about what was going on. But as a scientist, I could see energy relationships within the situation. And I knew, and I know now, even now, that when the Sasquatch are around me, that I'm better protected than at any other time in any other place. So that's a difference. I can't say there's a magic element to this to make that happen, but I do know, and I've said this to other scientists, and of course they blew me off right away, that when you reach a certain point in your awareness and your research, that you will have entities show up that can help you along the way, and or if they have to, they will prevent you from seeing things because you're not the right kind of person to be there. So there's a further complexity, and yes, I understand because it was hard for me to believe when it happened. But I have progressively seen and documented much of how it happened, so that I can show it to other people in pictures. And I've run into some pictures that won't even look at what, or some people that won't even look at the pictures that I've got. They're so sure that Sasquatch, Bigfoot doesn't exist that they won't even look at pictures of my documentation of what they can do. I find that closed-minded, and I find
absolutely
a significant amount of closed-mindedness, and that doesn't help us, doesn't help them, doesn't help anybody to be closed-minded about any of this.
No, not at all.
need
I
help.
mean, we do, and we can't put labels on things. I mean, I think one of the reasons why we haven't really progressed a great deal in the United States is because we've been so closed-minded and so egocentric. And, and I will say, MUFON, I mean, putting things in boxes, and I know that Steve Hudgens has said this, we're not, if it looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, blah, 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 then it is. And that's in my opinion, a really closed-minded approach. And I think also the fact that UFO researchers, we're not going to look at anything paranormal or anything. We're not looking at all the data. We're going to just pick and choose what we want to. It is absolutely all connected. And we've done ourselves a great disservice by not understanding how complex this is and looking at everything.
It's appropriately complex.
It is, and I'm excited to talk a little bit more about this and instrumentation. We're getting ready to take our break. This is the longer break, but I want to thank all my friends for getting in there from all over the world, adding great comments, from sending me messages. I get messages from people you wouldn't believe. I'm Erica Lukes here with Gary Hart. We will be back in a few minutes.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at ufoclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
Now, broadcasting in digital HD radio.
This landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazell was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Welcome back and happy Fantopia Friday. It has been an incredible week and the best is yet to come. Stick around. 2018 is going to be such an incredible year, and whatever you say about DeLong, and a lot of people have poo-pooed all of his efforts, but you can't do that now. I mean, he and his team are delivering and they are getting information out there, and whatever the agenda is, that we'll have to be very diligent and cautious with regard to all of that and pay attention to statements people make. I think Libertas made a really great point when he called in about Tom DeLong's choice of words or the alien threat and different things like that. And according to Grant Cameron, all of these things have been edited and toned down a bit. So perhaps they're getting that message, but it is always important to question people's belief systems, motivations. But nevertheless, they have opened the floodgates. They have done us all a great service by giving credibility to a subject that we know is the most important thing we can ever study or research or be open to. And so it's just historic. On that note, I'm here with somebody who is done great research since 1987, and he's been out there in the field. He has purchased properties to do his research in active locations. I mean, how many of us do that? I don't think no one that I know. So Gary Hart is here. And Gary, when we left off, we were talking about portals, about the fact that you have seen several portals and you have had different interactions with entities, different types of entities. And let's continue where we left off.
Well, I can say there's the scientific basis for what I'm doing in southeastern Missouri primarily is because there are very complex fault patterns there. And other mainstream seismic scientists have determined that there are certain types of faults that generate most of the luminous activity when there are large earthquakes around the world. So I took that information and I know what sort of sightings, because they're all highly unusual, and they're either direct UFO sightings or things that are called into the database because they look strange. They don't necessarily appear solid, but they're like balls of light moving around, emitting smoke and fire, and beams of light, area light ups, fires that look like they appear on the ground and then disappear. That's all either a paranormal phenomena or a true UFO phenomena, and all of it's lumped together and associated with faults, certain types of faults. 5% of the total seismic energy around the world is released by three basic types of faults, and these faults are responsible for 86% of the luminous phenomena associated with faults. That's the last large paper that was written, and then they give the data they based that on, and some of the stuff is downright UFO sort of thing. There was one sighting in near Asheville, North Carolina, where they just before an earthquake there, they saw two big balls of light moving down the river. Well, you can see that sort of type of phenomena in a number of different books that I've read. It matches a UFO-like phenomena. People see balls of light, numerous balls of light in particular locations on a repetitive basis. Well, it gets into the MUFON database. They really don't know what to do with it, but those are the kind of cases that I like to reopen if I'm given permission and to go in and get more information about, because they're right down my line of research. But I'm in southeastern Missouri, and there are fault patterns. And one of the case situations that existed back in 2013 was I was called into a case where a person was seeing flashes in the sky, and then something would fly away from the flash for about 6 inches at arm's length and then disappear. So I got in there and started filming what was going on. I ended up filming, 8 different types of phenomena. And it was going on for several different months. And then a month after I got there and did the documentation, then there were 2 small earthquakes about 35 miles away, and the phenomena died away. Well, if it happens in one area, then it'll happen again. And there seems to be a consistent pattern of seismic energy along the river, Mississippi River, and down to the Boot Heel, where there are some huge fault patterns, and it's generated some huge quakes back in the 1800s and continue at the rate of about 1 quake a day. So there's an energy source, there's the faults, and because the seismic scientists can say at least 7 different types of luminous phenomena occur along these faults, they can't explain the physics behind any one of them. And in my observations, I was able to document, I can identify at least 20 different types of luminous phenomena, some of them looking exactly like UFOs, pulsating lights, and a lot of different types of lights. Very hard to believe until you actually see it. And especially if you see it documented, it's absolutely amazing. All this that hasn't been explained. And the seismic scientists don't even want to talk about it. It's almost like they've reached the end of their study because they got to a place that was very uncomfortable that they couldn't explain. But if you bring in other dimensional phenomena, or the fact that there is another dimension that is reachable through a portal as a transportation point, then it changes. All the equations change. But the way you look at it changes. The way that you deal with it changes. And then all of a sudden, these things that you're right in front of you that you're seeing makes sense. If we're dealing with energy that faults are able to generate naturally, that is not an energy scientists recognize. And what the phenomena that occurs around these faults on a regular basis is totally different physics. And that's why UFOs are so different, because they're using the same energy, in my opinion. It all fits together like a puzzle. And when you understand that and see these things operating in front of you on a much more frequent basis than any other research seems to be able to achieve, then you are able to start drawing conclusions, and testable conclusions still, though, and understand that, well, this is at least another dimension you're looking at. And if people realized how close things are on the other side, as I did when I was looking through a particular portal that opened up in the sky, you see craft flying by, and it's as if they're no more than a mile away, in lines of craft, as if it's like a transportation hub or something. And you see the complexity of it. You see where science comes up to a point where it explains why this luminous phenomenon is there in its many different forms, but why it's going to take a different explanation, something other than our standard physics, to explain why they have the characteristics they do. And then you're looking at a phenomenon at the boundary of the intersection of two dimensions, at least two, and why craft can appear and disappear, why that's going between dimensions. In the Hunt for the Skinwalker book, you had the wolf. That's what the wolf was doing. That's why its tracks disappeared. In the same way with the Sasquatch, tracks disappear. It went into the brush, tracks disappeared. Well, it went into the next dimension. It went through a portal because they're able to see them, and that explains why things happen that seem to defy our present physics. It's not that it's not real. It's real, but at a different level. And we have to understand that. So I can understand why what I say is so hard to believe, but it has a logical framework from one end to the other, and that makes it different. And,
absolutely. And I know that you have, I wanted just to ask you really quickly, because you have purchased property. We talked about this, and you have done extensive field research at active locations.
Yes, and going back to time and time again. I can't live there at this time, but there's one piece of property out near Springfield, Missouri, where I bought the property across the road because it went up for sale after a family had moved out that had seen, along with 35 of their neighbors back in the mid-'90s, dozens of craft flying around in light balls in the woods. And they had seen craft 300 feet long, craft going into the ground. And it caused such a stir that apparently a government group of government people came in and would not talk to the locals, but they would be walking across their property with white jumpsuits with instruments, trying to measure what was going on. And they wouldn't tell the people why they were there, who they were, or what authority they had to be walking across private property. And then,
what year was this?
This was mid-'90s. It started in 94 and went to 97 in Seymour, Missouri. So the government actually came in and did something about it at that time. They basically scared everybody so that they wouldn't talk. But then, 11 years later, the son of the family on the main piece of property, he became an intern at the paper, and he told the stories of what had happened back then. What was it? I can't remember. 2010, I believe is the date. When the paper started publishing the stories again, and the government came back in again and started blocking off roads and scaring people, they were concerned enough that they didn't want the story to get in 11 years later into the paper. And in fact, they had the reporter of the paper fired, and they bugged everybody's phones and started making harassing phone calls to the people that were talking and had heard things. Very strange. And this was witnessed by 3 retired police officers from the Denver area. So this is good information, and that's why I bought a piece of property across the road. And in fact, there still is a line of energy that goes from my property across the road to that other property. That is, in my thinking right now, is unexplainable. And I'm getting the other equipment to try to measure what the frequency is and try to explain why it's there, but it's not anything that we generate. It's not a power line. It's not a telephone line. It's not that sort of thing. It's completely different. So there is still energy, causative energy there, and there is a fault pattern there also. That's an example. The other properties that I own are all in active areas, so that I would have either my footprint in there where there's Sasquatch activity or where there's extreme level of UFO activity. In the place I described where this fault pattern where there's a graben, a huge graben, 6 miles by 7 miles in size, and that's one of the 3 types of fault patterns that generate the most light. When there's seismic stress, every few months it peaks up and you start seeing lights in the sky. And you can stand on my property and look all around you, and at any moment you may see something different. And what I'm seeing matches what Dr. Harley Rutledge was seeing down in 1973 in Piedmont, Missouri, when they had a flap, where hundreds of reports came in over the 2 or 3 month period. And I can say that some of the things I'm seeing are exactly the same as they're seeing in Hestel in Norway currently.
And isn't that fascinating? I would want to mention Harley Rutledge and Project Identification, because that is, I mean, that book is expensive. It is out of print. But if you can find a copy of that, I mean, that is groundbreaking and important work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And MUFON was there. And they did have him speak at one of their conferences, but essentially he's been ignored since. And yet that was the first scientific study of UFOs ever done. It was done in Missouri. We were proud of that.
That's amazing.
I'm not just in Illinois, I'm in Missouri now.
Well, I mean, and I love that. I mean, in fact, I think that you might have been one of the first people that told me about his work in that book, and I bought it. And I mean, it's like, that's one of my go-to books, along with Greg Long's book, Examining the Earth-Light Theory, and
the same thing.
Yeah.
A whole fault pattern there that Greg Long was talking about all this. All the different sightings in his book are essentially the same as what is in these other locations, because there, again, it's seismic energy and fault pattern. And the faults are of a certain type that can generate luminous energy, and the energy is something that science doesn't recognize. It is totally different. And yet it's not studied. They seem to be scared to study it. I know if that's government interference or not. I don't have any evidence for that. But there seems to be something really peculiar in the fact that it's not getting studied properly. Whether it's UFO organizations or the government or just science, independent scientists, it's not getting studied properly for some reason.
It isn't. And I will say that it's not getting studied properly, at least in the public, sense in America.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And,
the government knows something.
Norway, I mean, my God.
They wouldn't have tried to interfere with the Seymour situation, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's really sad. I mean, when I was at Hessdalen, and talking with Erling, and we had so many candid conversations, and it was just it was one of the most brilliant, important experiences of my life. But I mean, he said, we don't understand why America is like this, and why you're not, when you get information, you share information. You don't hide it.
I'm glad to. I'm happy to. Yes, and talk to people about where locations are potential sightings locations are near where other people are themselves, so it's a lot easier for them to study something. The areas have particular characteristics, so that's what I look for, and that's why I've opened up some old cases of MUFONs with permission, because I look for those particular characteristics in that, and I find it. Some cases, the investigators didn't know what to do with what they were hearing. And too many of these cases, there are a lot of fireball cases, but too many of them are tossed into the garbage because they think that they're these Chinese lanterns, and that's not true. You have to be able to separate good evidence from poor evidence. And one example is in central Missouri, a woman reported when she was camping, she saw fireballs on successive nights, she and her son. And I've now investigated the state park where she saw those. Well, when the investigator mentioned that they might be Chinese lanterns, the woman stopped communicating. But then when I called, she said, well, they were large. It was hard for her to estimate how large, but I said, well, how long did you see them? And she said, we saw them for a week. Well, that's not Chinese lanterns. And also, when she was younger, she saw a ball of light zoom past she and her friend as they were walking around in the park near one of the springs there. Came out of the side of the hill and zoomed past them and disappeared. which is another problem. MUFON cases, they don't investigate when a person says, well, my family has lived here all their lives and they've seen a lot of things too. But for some reason, it seems like nobody investigates that part of the sighting, of the case, where they investigate the main sighting, but then forget the additional information that can be gained. So you got to look at the scientific technique, and you got to change them. You got to make them more efficient and get more data.
Well, and
then all of a sudden,
exactly,
you got a bigger picture.
And you know, I mean, that to me, when I was state director here in Utah, I mean, I would sit back and I would look at the CMS and look at all of these reports and look at the questionable investigative skills or the narrow-mindedness of some of the people that were doing this. And it's like, you know, I mean, most investigators looked at the single case. They didn't look at the overall pattern. And that is where we have that is where we've done a huge disservice to ourselves. And I mean, I would have arguments with, you know, I mean, people, I mean, Mark D'Antonio, Steve Hudgens, I mean, all of these people, well, you know, these are airplane lights, you know, I go back to Steve Hudgens saying, you know, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, really? Well, no. Because whatever this is intelligent and it can mimic things that we see.
I'm getting more support every day at this location in eastern Missouri. Now some college students are interested. In this spring, we're going to have a really good research program at multiple locations because they first doubted what I was saying. I told them about some of the things I've seen, the balls of light and things that are pulsating that fly around. And they really doubted. Well, of course, everybody doubts it. But they went there themselves and they saw it. Now they're really excited to do something. And they say many of the things they've seen, it's an orange ball of light that travels through the air and then it turns into an airplane. And that's what they're going to be looking for. That's just one of the phenomena of the several dozen types of phenomena you can see. It's what one of the things, I haven't seen it there, but I've seen it very close to there, just a few miles away, as a matter of fact, in another location. When Harley Rutledge was doing a study down in Piedmont, Missouri, he saw what he described as pseudostars. I believe he saw 3 of them, and his research team saw 3 of them, and they named them pseudostars. And what they are is when you have to gaze up at a constellation, and all of a sudden, a light moves off of one of the stars. Well, in Harley's case, on one occasion, he saw 3 lights move off of 3 stars. Well, I've actually had a situation myself where I saw 4 lights move off of a constellation's stars. And before that, I was sleeping with my wife in a cabin. So they were targeting me, us, at that time, because you have to calculate at some distance where the star is, where the observer is, and get yourself right in the middle. And then to know when the observer sees you and then move off. And what they did was they moved off, they started blinking, and they started moving in all opposite directions. I managed to wake my wife up and she saw it too. Well, that's not a plane. Now, I've documented one of those situations where I saw a pseudostar. I was looking up, I saw all these balls of light for a number of hours. I saw a portal, 2 stationary portals, one on the ground and one in the air, that had sheets of white light across them and were flickering. The sky was flickering, which is something that faults can cause the sky to do. And I saw this hole open up. It was UFOs traveling on the other side. And it was open for, I don't know how many, 10 minutes or so, and then it closed up again. So the energy had thinned the veil between dimensions so that I could see on the other side. But all of this is related. I could see the energy relationship that the fault was causing. It turns out I was standing right on top of a fault, and there were again an earthquake 3 hours later after this event stopped. So I saw the connection. The energy was making the sky flicker. It was making these 2 portals flicker. It caused the opening of another portal so I could see craft on the other side. It seemed like a habitat for these balls of light that were flying all around me. And then I saw these balls of light that expanded into something that was transparent and had a dragonfly-like being inside. And that's what Jack Lapsaritis describes in his Sasquatch People book as having gone to visit somebody who had a portal in their side yard and they saw these dragonfly beings. So you have all these connections. So it's a real situation. Hard to believe, but when you see it, it's mind-boggling, and it took me several months to comprehend what I had seen. So it's definitely not an instant process.
No, it isn't, and I think that I have to ask you. We've got to go to break in 1 minute, but with regard to the fault lines in Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, are there fault lines running through the ranch?
There is at least one fault line in that vicinity. Now, it depends on the rock, the deposits, because it doesn't explain every situation. It does explain in Missouri the strongest situation. It doesn't seem to explain all of them, so I'm not even proposing yet, because this where these balls of light were seen in the state park. There are flat, horizontal, multi-layer rock deposits.
Okay, we're going to have to cut you off right there. I need to talk to. We're going to go to break, and I'm sorry. I'm Erica Lukes here with Gary Hart. We will catch you on the other side of the break.
Stand by.
This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
With Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
Hello everyone, this is David Cook from the Ghosty Hour. Wishing you all a Merry Christmas, and it's time to enjoy a different kind of spirit. But please do so safely and have a very happy Christmas with your family.
Paranormal. Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal.
The U.S. military holds the ability to time travel.
Jeremy Scott asks the questions that we're all dying to know.
Wow, that's a remarkable question.
Watch your step. Hide under your blankets.
The show that is going to make you think.
Prepare yourself for what you're about to hear.
This transmission is coming to you.
You're riding into the Parabnormal.
Live Saturday night, 6 to 9 on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Listen up, everyone.
This is the world-famous KCOR.
That's the only station I listen to.
Jump in bed and cover up your head, 'cause Santa Claus comes tonight.
This is Misha Johnston.
Mary Munoz.
Hannah Thorson.
With Starseed Awakening.
It doesn't matter how Santa's gift gets there. Doesn't even matter if it's Mr. Postman in his spaceship. As long as it gets there. You made it happen, Virgil. No one got left out.
Merry Christmas and have a Happy New Year.
Ho, 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 ho.
If ever a breed was affectionate to a fault, it's the Golden Retriever. They're people dogs, pure and simple. And the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada needs your help. If you would like to volunteer, foster, adopt, or donate, go to the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada's website at grrsn.org. That's grrsn.org. Or call 598-GOLD. That's 598-GOLD.
Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. Jump onto the Celestial Highway and travel at the speed of light. Into hyperspace. Hyperspace. Hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. She navigates you through the cosmic tides of mysticism into the world of covert technology, UFOs, mystical sciences, and the world of unforeseen forces.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Listen live, Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific.
For Hyperspace.
The one show that blows the whistle off our government black ops projects. Hyperspace. Hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Want to take a ride?
You're listening to
UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
Well, so much information on a really important night, an important week in the field of UFO, UAP research. I am here with Gary Hart, who has done a lot of incredible work, and he has been one of those people that I've gravitated towards because of the amount of time he has spent, the amount of money. I mean, he has purchased properties where this is happening, and he's in there doing research, and he is intelligent but open-minded, and that is how we're going to really make some progress in this field. He was mentioning Springfield, Missouri, back in 94, 95, when the government knew there was something happened, or a certain faction came in and tried to discourage people from talking about the fact that this area was home to a lot of sightings. I really would like to talk a little bit more about that, or at least ask you, Gary, before we go back to the mineral deposits and things. But did anybody ever figure out what branch? I mean, are we sure that they were government officials, or were these people involved with?
They were in
perhaps
white cars. They had white cars. They speculated they were NASA people. At least some of the people walking around in their fields were NASA people because of the way they were dressed. Now, I know the Navy has handled UFO recoveries operations at different times. The CIA is not supposed to operate inside our country. It could be the NSA, because that was the suggestion that Bigelow's Ranch was, the money was used to run a study on Bigelow's Ranch at the same time that they were involved with MUFON's database. And there are several books that have been written about that, about what the guards have said that were hired, that they, any time they experienced some weird phenomena, then they were taken aside and given a physiological scan and an MRI to see if there was any changes that could be measured. But that was also involved. But as far as a fault being, let me just finish this thought. There's a fault there that's to the west of the ranch. And in late 97, there was a small earthquake. And that's essentially when the activity died down for a period of time. And I did make a phone call to George Knapp, and he kind of blew it off. It's okay. Doesn't mean that what I'm chasing in eastern Missouri is the answer to every other location. It's just that certainly those characteristics that are present there are that make it the strongest location, and I would say one of the best locations in the world.
So I have to ask you, when were there? Did you go back and look at the sightings reports in the CMS when this took place in 94, 95 to see if
nothing shows up? I haven't checked that. I know that there are reports every so often from that area, Webster County, and around Springfield. They have a lot of activity around in those areas, and I collected the reports from those areas. Nothing really stands certain, not what was really going on in these few properties right in the middle of the area at that time. There's a large crop circle that was across the road from the small house. They were seeing a lot of craft flying around, balls of light, in which they've seen different types of lights from then till now. But the ground was shaking. The ground was vibrating. They said the fence right next to the back of the house was vibrating. On occasion, people would drive in at night and see the whole area around the house glowing orange, which is a dimensional discharge based upon my observations in other situations. They also said that one time a woman got up to go to the bathroom and she had encountered was it a yellowish-green a rectangular beam of light coming through the ceiling and going down into the floor, stationary. All kinds of weird stuff. In fact, they were seeing ETs in their barn and ETs in their house, running around in their house, besides seeing balls of light zipping around in their house also. I mean, all the phenomena put together. When it's the strongest, one of the measures of how strong an area is energized is how many different types of phenomena do you see. So you get the connection between different types of phenomena and the strength of the energy, just basically letting things come into this dimension and bounce around and zip around and have their own little experience. So it happens whether we like it or not, because it's actually a part of nature. So if we don't study it, we're not studying the full reality, and we're certainly not understanding a part of nature that has to exist and is a normal feature and function of reality. Nothing really mysterious about it, ultimately, if you study it properly and you get more familiar with it and see all the relationships just like physical relationships, but they're all different. And I can give you an example of that also. There were red light sightings a couple of weeks ago across, supposedly from Colorado down, I don't know, somewhere east of here. But they were seen, multiple reports were seen through the top of Missouri going from west to east. And MUFON wants to collect those reports. And my friend, the co-investigator that lives in Missouri, is collecting some of those reports. Well, he was called out by a friend to look at them. He said, well, we saw 9 to 10 of these red lights looked like they were hovering or moving really slowly in a line with one end tilted. Well, I talked to some friends that lived miles, maybe 10 miles south of there. Well, they saw a line of lights, but they were blinking, and there were 2 white lights that were zipping around them. Then if you go further north to the Lake of the Ozarks, they saw 50 of them. Well, that seems to be a characteristic of the phenomena that when you have a mass sighting, people don't see the same thing. Which, in logic sense, no, that doesn't make any sense. But the thing is, that's what's reported. And that's how it works. And don't ask me how, but it does. I had a similar situation back in the mid-'90s, again, where people were seeing this either a white or a blue ball of light at various locations across northern Missouri. A woman in Peoria up here in central Illinois talked to me on the phone about it, and then drove over 35 miles to talk to me about it, which doesn't seem like that would make any sense. Some of the sightings had been just a few hours before in southern Illinois. When we walked out in my backyard, we saw an emerald green diamond-shaped craft with a fluorescent orange tail fly over my backyard. Well, it would seem to me there's a connection, but exactly how or why that connection exists, I don't know. But when you deal with a phenomenon, you have to become familiar with what's going on, and that's part of it. But that's an example of, I have stories upon stories like this of things that I've seen and experienced and then had interact with me. And most investigators can't say that. But
no, because most investigators sit behind their computers.
Exactly. I've had investigators
investigators, but you know.
Well, I understand you join MUFON, you're waiting for reports. You can actually go out and find reports in your local area. You can investigate haunted reports. You can look for cases where people have seen balls of light in the woods, and they're in every state.
Exactly.
I've had investigators argue with me that there's no such thing as hotspots. Well, yes, I've gone through databases, and I try to put together where the highest frequency of sightings occur, and then I go there and start talking to the locals.
I don't think you can call them investigators. You shouldn't even give them that title. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's like, are you kidding? I mean, at what point do we not look at the facts, the data, you know?
Well, if somebody trains to be a MUFON investigator, I'm trying to encourage them, look around your own neighborhood, because you've got reports like I'm working with somewhere around there, and you can find them. But you got to put some effort into it. You got to get out the door, and you got to look at maps, and you have to collect data. I've found, like a pseudostar, there was an exact report of a pseudostar in a haunted website that I got in touch with, several months ago. And during the summer, I went and talked to the guy that wrote the report, and he described it precisely. And that was one of the times when I saw a UFO after I talked. In fact, while I was talking with him, I had a 5-day period where I had given a talk in front of a MUFON group, and then later that evening I saw a UFO, a blue-white blinking object through the trees. And then a couple of days later, I talked to this guy about the pseudostar he'd seen. And when we sat down at the picnic table where he worked, he said, "Look at that light." And we both looked over through the trees, and there was exactly the same type of light, a very slow blue-white pulsing object. And then several days later, I was in the driveway of this co-investigator friend of mine in Missouri, and I saw a light that was darting around on the other side of some trees. You get the feeling it's there for you. In my case, it's encouraging me to do what I'm doing. He says, "That's right. You're doing it right." Because I don't hear other people saying that things interact with you when you're doing something significant.
Yes.
And important. And helping people to understand what they've seen.
Right.
And to give them a few tips about how they can see more without having to be afraid of what they're seeing.
And so we've got some questions that I want to ask you really quickly. Yeah. And when you and I were both talking about on the break the fact that, with Hessdalen, they had not done, they're not really up to date with mapping fault lines and things, and we're much more progressive here because of minerals and all of these things. Mm-hmm. But what are the other commonalities for the hotspots?
Lots of haunted phenomena, lots of luminous discharges, lots of UFOs, lots of haunted phenomena. The mines, the area that I'm studying is one of the world's largest lead deposits, and the mines are extremely haunted. So you can talk to any of the miners, and if you can get them to talk, they'll tell you about haunted sightings they've had in the mines. One guy was just scared to death because there was some thing or someone that was shutting off the lights and stopping the elevators when he was on as a security guard at night. And that would certainly scare you if you were caught in an elevator between floors. And he'd just sit there and punch the button until it started going again, because that's all he could do. Otherwise, you'd have to wait a couple of days for the Monday crew to come in. Something was definitely playing with him. Then he saw a ghost on a number of occasions. And then he was in an area where there's a large gantry crane, and he walked through a door into the area, and this gantry crane swung past him and nearly touched his nose. If he had been a foot further, it would have killed him. Something was physically moving machinery and was angry. But there have been a number of miners killed at the mines, and it's assumed that it's one of the miners. Well, why is it that strong? It's because that area is emitting energy and has a series of faults underneath it. So it makes haunted activity possible, and it makes it a lot stronger. And it's easier to study ground activity and haunted phenomena is ground activity. So you have to keep it at arm's length to some extent, but just as something to study. And you have to be able to protect yourself, your aura, so that you don't let something attach itself to you, because there are particular techniques to prevent that. It's certainly basically understanding that they can is the first step, and most people don't understand you can get attached.
Exactly, and I want to talk about that, but I have to ask you about the underground rivers. Do you have any underground rivers on your property? This was a question that was asked.
I would say yes, because there is a lot of caves. There's one property where a couple, I think one property away, there's a subsidence hole where the pond is falling, in the process of falling through. And down the road, my friend is where my friend lives. I just live up the road from him. They've seen a lot of UFOs. He's seen a portal along the road. But he said when his well was drilled, they had to case through two voids until they reached the bottom where the well was fixed. And then we know a person further down the road that has drilled a well recently, and he went through a 90-foot void. So there are huge caves underneath, and there is undoubtedly water flow, because that's what forms caves. But we have no understanding of what that all looks like. In fact, all of Missouri has the second largest number of caves, second only to Tennessee. That is
interesting.
Over 6,500 caves.
Wow.
At this point, and I think they're getting another 100 every year, is what their claim is.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so here's another question from one of my incredibly intelligent listeners, and she wants to know, is there a connection to the antimatter beams that are generated by lightning storms in the upper atmosphere and shot into space?
I am not sure. I'm not sure. It is interesting that those were just discovered a few years ago. It's also that when lightning bolts are generated and strike, they generate gamma rays. So, which is what soft X-rays are, I believe, or hard X-rays. So there's a lot that we don't know about the natural world, and where all this phenomena is generated is part of it. And it's actually quite a large part of it. There's a lot of things that we don't know. So we shouldn't be arrogant about how much we do know. We should be understanding of how much we don't know, and that's what makes everything exciting for me.
Oh, absolutely.
To find out more about what we don't know.
And so, how do we protect ourselves?
In my case, the Sasquatch help. I'm basically a student of them, and we're learning from them. They're bringing more information out. You can read something that's been, and I know it's channeling is not necessarily everybody's cup of tea, but that's been channeled from Sasquatch on Kelly Lapsarida's website. She had something that Kamo, Sasquatch, talked about within the last couple of days, I believe. And Jack Lapsarida's books is an excellent background to paranormal phenomena, UFOs, and Sasquatch, and portals. So I would suggest reading both his Psychic Sasquatch and Sasquatch People books, because that's when I got the idea, maybe you don't have to hunt them. You can just be positive and go out and see if they're there and look at their stick structures, their sculptures in the woods. And it generated a meeting. It generated a communication and a lasting relationship. And I was shocked at how easy that happened after reading his book, after determining that I would take a more positive direction instead of chasing them or hunting them, that I would treat them as equals. And it happened. So that certainly helps, because they actually are protectors of us. And that means a lot in this field.
Absolutely. And so how else would you protect? It is. And I mean, how else would you protect yourself? Because there's so many different ways and so many different things that I've been reading with regard to this.
Well, you image white light coming in through your crown chakra and going down through your body and forming a shell around you. That's certainly one way of doing it. There may be other ways of doing it. I can't say what's better than the other, but know that you can use energy to protect yourself. And that if something can attach itself to you, that you can prevent it from doing it because you have a physical presence and a physical existence. And they're not on this. They're primarily not in this dimension, and then they're not able to have a home. They can come into your home, but that it's not their home, and you can declare spaces to being yours.
So how do you know? There. How do you know if something is in your space?
Well, the other thing, you'll know. You'll know. You won't have any problem knowing. I've seen entities take over people because they're alcoholics. It's perfectly obvious to me what's happening, but it's just generally not thought of in our civilized world is not a good way of putting it, but in our culture, it's not accepted that things like that could happen, but they do. And you were asking about protection. Let's see. Well, there are different ways of doing it. I had an idea that popped in, and it kind of popped out.
Well, no, but I mean, I think you made a brilliant point, though. It's knowing your own power, knowing that you are powerful and you have the ability to do that. Yeah. And it's also, stepping back and really honoring your senses and honoring whatever intuition that you're getting, because it's important. And the more I learn about this, just like you, the more I understand that there is energy around us all the time. There are beings, entities around us all the time. We don't have, we need to develop our intuitive skills to figure that out, to work with them, to respect whatever this is. And a lot of, the whole thing is just such a trip. I could go on and on about this, but this is important stuff.
Yeah. You have a right to control your own space. And I would say something very quickly, that in one of the Brian Weiss books, he's a psychologist that studied spiritual interaction with us. And he said he went to China, a couple of different countries. One was China, and he went to some spiritual adepts there. And he said, I haven't seemed to have a lot of bad things happen to me in my life. And why is that? And they basically laughed at it and said, well, it's because you're a positive person and that negativity doesn't want to be around you. And then he went into another Buddhist monks or whatever. He went to another series of adepts, and they said the same thing. They started laughing at him, and they said, "It's because you are a positive person, and negativity doesn't want to be around you." So that's important. That is actually a very important concept.
It is.
Determine
it's beautiful.
Who are you really?
Yes.
And are you a positive person? And you've got to exude positivity. You have to channel the life force itself. I'm not into religion. I'm into spirituality, and that's how I look at it. You are a channel for the life force itself, and that's what you spread everywhere.
Absolutely. And I have to, and I love it.
Works with you.
It does. It absolutely does. And you have to be strong and have a strong presence. And I want to ask you, because we're getting ready to close the show, but what if you were to tell somebody to go out and get equipment, what equipment would you recommend?
Well, a magnetometer is good. It doesn't have to be really expensive, but I use lights, ones with lights, so I can see them at night. I do have radio frequency meters also. An inexpensive one is like a micro alert from Alpha Labs, because it emits a chirp when it's near a radio frequency emission. But as we talked about over the break, do keep in mind that even your car can be a sensor, because I've had my door locks slip 3 different times when I was over a fault. And when it's generating these large electromagnetic pulses, then that's where activity can occur. And you should make note of that. I know a person that reported that in Michigan, and I've had 2 other friends reported in 2 other locations. One was at Ted Phillips, Marley Woods, where her door locks flipped when she was looking at an object in the sky. And another person that you really ought to know, Sam Updegrove, said he was at the Joplin area at a spot along that road, and they had some quartz crystals in their hands, and the quartz crystals lit up at the same time that they heard their door locks flip, and could see on their meters, their meters were spiking. So there are some very curious activities you can keep track of and be aware of, and then there are all other kinds of equipment that you can get, but electromagnetic field meter. I have a meter that's measures magnetic, electric, and RF energy all at once. It runs about $300. But that's nice because you have everything sensed at once. Otherwise, you have to carry several different meters all on at the same time, so that you're aware of any type of energy field that might be present. It's not just one.
Well, you know what? That absolutely helps. And I think tonight, I mean, if in the next 24 hours, let's get back on UFO Classified on the Facebook page and then talk a little bit more about equipment, because I think that would be really good for people. And like I said, I just think that you are really an incredible researcher. I think you're willing to put yourself out there. You're willing to understand that there are important, benevolent beings, malevolent. There's it's a whole smorgasbord.
Definitely so.
But there is something there that is so beautiful and incredible, and something that we need to be, at least, and then I'm just going to interject this, but I think now when all of this disclosure is happening, we need to really step back and say, okay, how do we want to address this, because this is interacting with us. And do we want to go down the road of weaponizing space, or thinking that all of this is a threat? I don't think we do. I think we need to come together and make a very concerted effort to move this in a positive direction.
Right. They don't want us to have a nuclear conflict. They want to help us get past that and take responsibility for the pollution we're creating on this planet. They really want to help us. The ones I've talked to or experienced. And then with these pseudostars, I have documented the pseudostar. There's an intelligence thing that's bouncing around in the sky that has been here for decades, maybe millennia, trying to get our attention. And it does. And I've talked to a lot of people. They've seen it, but they didn't know what it meant.
And I need to talk to you more about that. I can hear that music, and we've got to go. But Gary Hart, thank you so much. Oh, keep your eyes open and keep your wits about you.
And hone your senses.
Yeah, hone your senses. Exactly.
Because your other senses are important.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for tonight. And just rest assured, 2018 is going to be a great year. Have a happy holiday, my friends. And I will.
Thank you, and you too.
Next week,
and all your listeners.
Yes, absolutely. You guys be safe. Stick around for Tina Marie on Restricted Airspace. I think she's got things to say about Tom DeLonge. We will catch you next week.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at UFOclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the